But what I want to talk about now is the fascia and the fascinating fascia and the role it plays in not only our position of our baby in our uterus, because it actually does affect our uterus, but also how it plays with our pain sensation and our ability to move, particularly late in pregnancy. So if you look at the top slide here, you can see in the blue, that's actually our fascia lining. Now our fascia is our lining that not only covers our body from the lower part of our dermis, and particularly covers our internal organs as our lining of internal organs, but it also covers our muscles and covers, if you look at the bottom right slide, it actually covers our muscles. And you can see every single muscle fiber there, and then within every single muscle fiber, within every single muscle group, it covers those muscle fibers. So if we look at our fascia, which is like that cobweb at the top of the muscles on our bottom right side, if you look at that, it looks like a really bad cobweb. And if you compare that to the pictures A and B, and the bottom pictures underneath that on the left-hand side, can you see that they're a little bit more uniformed in structure? Bang, 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 bang. And can you actually see down low that they are actually filled with fluid? So fascia is 90% filled with water and collagen. And what they do in our bodies, and particularly when we're moving our muscles, is that they slide. So the more hydrated they are, and the more in uniform they are in slide A and B as opposed to the slide on the right-hand side, they can actually move really well. So if you take that noted into the actual fascia complex throughout our body, if they are able to slide beautifully, it actually helps with our uterus getting into a lovely position. And so our baby can get into a good position as well. If our fascia is like cobwebs in the bottom right, it restricts the movement. That's one of the reasons why when we're sort of stretching like this, like, oh, we're feeling a little bit tense. It's not just the muscles, it's our fascia. It's really, really, really interesting. So how do we make it from the cobweb to that beautiful fine bolt of, it's like a bolt of cotton. How do we make it like that? It's easy. It's movement. It's pure and simple movement. So it affects us by, it contracts with our modern living. That has been seen over and over and over again. The fascia, there's actually a lot of research, there's actually a lot of fascia, there's actually a lot of research in fascia going on at the moment. And there's actually a discussion that fascia should actually be seen as an organ. Yeah, as an organ. Our skin is an organ, and what actually defines an organ is the same cell structure throughout the whole thing. And fascia has the same cell structure throughout the whole process. So let's talk about it that. And fascia is connected all the way through to our body. So one of the things that really affects us in childbirth is that the fascia in our neck, that we have in our neck, is directly connected to the fascia that surrounds our pelvic floor. So just take note of how that can actually affect us in childbirth. Fascia is just fascinating. I love it. I love it. And the one thing that has actually got a lot of research is that, do you know that a fun fact is that fascia has the most nerves and stretch receptors in the body? So if we have the capacity to have this gliding in our fascia, it actually helps with our pain response, and it actually helps with the relaxing of the uterus, and so our baby can get into that good position for birth. So I've just got a really interesting slide into talking about what an OP or an occipito posterior position, how that is implicated in our modern society in actually birthing. So on the left, we actually have a baby with their back. So if we're looking at the baby on the left-hand side, the baby's face is facing the spine. So that means that the baby's back is on the mother's stomach. So the presenting part is actually a very narrow diameter. It's 9.5 technically in the textbook across. So that can actually pass through the pelvis a lot simpler than a baby that has their baby's back on the right-hand side. That's actually wrong. It's not occipito anterior, it's occipito posterior, because the baby's back is on the mother's back. And as you can see there, the diameter now is 11 centimeters. And this is just a textbook, 11 centimeters. Every baby is different, as we know. We just use this for argument's sake. So it's one of the reasons why it's a lot more painful to birth in a posterior position. And if we go to the next slide, I think I actually have an example of how baby goes into the pelvis and actually rotates. So this rotation, as you can see, the baby is passing into the pelvis from the side. So as a baby actually descends into a woman's pelvis, they rotate around. So if a baby starts off at their back, they've got a long rotation all the way around. It's like rotating from 9 o'clock. If we're looking at a clock, it's like rotating from like a 7 to a 9 o'clock station on the clock all the way around to a 6 o'clock rotation, as opposed to if a baby comes in on a side lying or an anterior, which is the front position, they've only got from about 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock to go. So that's a lot less time as well. So just have a look around here. So you see how baby's going into the pelvis. Hello, little baby. And we're rotating around very soon. So you see the cervix is starting to dilate, and see how they're moving across, and now baby's coming down, going through the cervix, through the vagina, and now baby's out. And then baby's head is out, and then they move to the side again. They're so clever. See, they're so clever. They know what to do. They know how to manage going through a woman's pelvis and birth canal. So if I just go back to this slide, when a baby is on a back on back situation, this is where the really long, hard labors come in. This is where, Liz, have you experienced this? I know I have, time and time again, where women have that really long early labor where it is so painful because it's all in their back. And it's painful and they are exhausted. So by the time they actually get into active labor, which is when they have those strong regular contractions and they go into that beautiful labor land where nothing exists except for them, they're exhausted. They are absolutely exhausted. And so this is one of the big things about having a baby in modern Western society. And it's all because we sit down, we don't move as much, we sit in front of the computer, particularly with our work, where we're sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours a day. And when we come home, what are we doing? We're leaning against a couch and watching Netflix. Now, I know when I'm sitting down like this, it is nice and comfortable. Of course, it's really nice and comfortable. But what happens is that our baby gets into this back-to-back presentation, this OP presentation, and then they're in a hammock. And I know when I'm in a hammock, I don't want to get out of a hammock. Do you want to get out of a hammock, Liz?
No.
Exactly, neither does a baby. So it's one of the reasons why when you approach your third trimester, why it's really encouraged, and this is actually known in routine and mainstream maternity care, is you sit on a gym ball. Even if you're in an office, you sit on a gym ball, because if you're sitting on a gym ball, you are sitting forward. If you're sitting forward, you're sitting on your sit bones. That's your spines. You're sitting on your spines. You're sitting on that pubic bone. And that actually promotes your baby to get into a really nice position in birth, into a side lying position. But there's also exercises we can do to actually help release that psoas muscle. And that goes from yoga, goes from qigong. There's a couple of beautiful qigong moves that I know to release it. And it actually helps with releasing the fascia that binds us on our front as well. It's actually really kind of cool. And there's also this beautiful website called Spinning Babies by this beautiful midwife in America called Gail. Gail, what's her last name, Liz?
I can't remember.
Neither can I. Gail Tully. Gail Tully.
That's
Gail
right.
Tully in Spinning Babies. And she's got all these beautiful, beautiful releases you can do. And also Bowen therapy is fantastic, isn't it? Remember Bowen therapy where we were? And Emmett
Oh,
therapy? All
absolutely.
those beautiful muscle releases. It actually releases the round ligament, the psoas ligament, and also the sacral bone as well. Because once you release the sacral bone, oh, it's just magic, and a baby can get into a really good position, and labor can actually start, can't it? We've seen it time and time again. It's awesome. I mean, how many people did you refer to this beautiful practitioner called Charlie, the Bowen? And how many times did you called up at 2 o'clock in the morning because she came into hospital to birth?
I used a couple of our therapists on a very regular basis for a very long time.
Yeah, with really good results, eh?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
certainly had that magic touch to just release that fascia and help those babies to rotate.
Yeah, because it's that contraction of our fascia, it's a contraction of our psoas, it's a contraction of our ligaments that actually hold our uterus in a certain tensed position. So our babies can't get into a natural position at the end of their pregnancy. Their position is back on back. And that is so predominant in Western society because we sit down and we drive. We never saw that in developing countries because they walk. And when they're cooking, guess what? They squat. They do not sit in chairs. They sit on the floor. They sit on the ground. They sit cross-legged and they squat. Interesting. Really interesting observation. And like I said before, I was actually called for an emergency presentation at 2 o'clock in the morning in Ethiopia from the midwife because he had an OP, a back on back presentation, and he did not know what to do. It's like, don't worry, I've got this. It's all right. This is normal in Australia. This is normal. So it's interesting. So Chief takeaways from there. I know you didn't have many, your internet connection went a bit skewered, but could you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you.
Yeah. So, what were your chief takeaways from there, Liz?
Um, it's the something I promoted is the importance of movement, leaning forward whenever you have the chance. Uh, you know, as you say, using the yoga ball, just anything that counteracted sitting and the car travel, which wherever I've worked has actually unfortunately been a big issue to have to deal with.
Yes, I know, because some women were traveling an hour to come and see us, and they were traveling an hour to go to work and an hour to come back from work.
Yeah, lots of car travel, and today modern day cars have very comfortable seats. I acknowledge that, but um, they're not posture friendly when you're having a baby.
Exactly. Exactly. They're not, are they? No way. Because it really tenses up that psoas muscle and the round ligament and our fascia. It really
Yeah.
does. And one of the things I always used to advise my girls as well is if you're working in an office and you're in front of a computer, put an alarm on your phone for every hour to get up and stretch and walk around and stretch up and just stretch up and just move around, because not only are we moving our fascia and actually making it slide like this, okay, we're also helping our muscles, we're helping our lymph. Our lymph is huge because our lymph does not have a pump like our heart. It's one of the reasons why women get that edema late in pregnancy. You know how late in pregnancy so many women get cankles because you've got all that fluid that goes out of our veins and pulls into our tissues. So that actually counteracts all that. It's interesting. But anyway, let's go on to the last little bit, okay? We've put in a really good effort. So we're talking about diet and exercise. Here is this beautiful marathon runner. Look at her powering on. And look at this beautiful, lovely, healthy bit of food. It's awesome. So, one question, Liz, would you train for a marathon?
In this context, yes, but yeah, if I think back to my birth, and I probably did it very unconsciously when look back. But yeah, certainly that keeping, being upright, being active, eating properly are all. I mean that was just a given with me. That's the way I've always eaten, and the movement because I worked. I was always moving.
Yeah, yeah, movement is the key, is
Mm.
the absolute key. Because the interesting thing I find about fascia is how many nerve endings we have in the fascia that and the pain receptors as well. If we had fascia that is really nice and glides, it actually affects our pain response.
Yeah, well, it's not stiff.
Exactly, exactly. And there is more and more research coming out into fascia. There's a couple of really prominent, significant researchers, scientists out there that are delving right into it. And we're finding more and more about it as time goes by. It's absolutely fascinating. Fascinating fascia. But we're talking about motherhood, we're talking about diet and exercises. So This is really simple. So one of the things that we have in our Western modern world is processed foods, more and more of them. We've got fast food outlets, but even when we go into supermarkets now, we've even got vegetables that we have that are cut up because we don't have the time to cut up our vegetables anymore. We have these pre-packaged sauces. We have a lot of processed foods. So processed foods have been seen and there's so much research into it that this is actually poison. It makes our bodies acidic, especially sugar. Not only does it make our bodies acidic, it affects our gut-brain health because, as we know, there's a lot of research going into this, that we have direct receptors from our gut into our brain. We have more serotonin receptors in our gut than in our brain, don't we? So it actually helps with balancing our hormones and balancing our mood. We're talking about water. So there's a lot of research out there that suggests that actually has verified that about 80% of people are dehydrated. That's a lot, isn't it?
Huge.
80% of us. And we're guilty. I'm feeling thirsty now because I've been talking for so long. And we can tell that we're dehydrated by, guess what, the color of our urine. Our urine should actually be a really pale straw color. And why it's important to be hydrated is that it actually helps with hydration of every single cell in our body. We've got over 50 trillion cells in our body. So if you're looking at water, at the hydration on a cellular level in our body, it actually helps with the energy transfer in the subparticles called mitochondria in every cell in our body. If we don't have that amount of water, our cells shrink up a little bit, like a plum versus a prune, like a grape versus a raisin. And so that's when we lose our vitality, our energy, particularly when it comes late in pregnancy. And not only that, late in pregnancy, if we don't have the water late in pregnancy, our baby doesn't have the amniotic fluid that it would normally have if we were dehydrated, because all our water is going towards keeping us going, and it's subverting the amniotic fluid in our bodies. And the interesting thing is, when I was working in Arnhem Land, where it's really, really hot all the time, like it's got two seasons in Arnhem Land. Arnhem Land, it's either hot or not so hot, as you're aware because you worked up in the Kimberleys, Liz.
Mm.
And just about every single woman that came to sit down for birthing in the hospital that I worked at there, they had oligohydramnios, which is decreased amniotic fluid, because they didn't drink enough water. So if we got them to drink enough water, guess what? Their amniotic fluid increased. Interesting, hey?
Mm.
Really interesting. So that's why it reduces your complications in your third trimester. Because if we start with eating whole foods, it decreases our likelihood of developing gestational diabetes, and that coupled with exercise really dramatically decreases our likelihood of developing gestational diabetes and other complications in pregnancy, like oligohydramnios, like hypertension. It's incredible. And it also reduces our complications in childbirth because, remember, it's that knock-on effect. And if we actually have really good whole food in pregnancy or through our pregnancy, not only is it really good for our baby and really good for us, decreasing the likelihood of getting all these complications, but it also increases our vitality late in pregnancy and our movement late in pregnancy. So we're not so absolutely floored and really, really wishing that our baby would come out. And I've actually seen this with women who are really fit, eat super healthy. They've got this incredible, not only do they have a pregnancy glow, but they have that pregnancy glow that's magnified. Hey, Liz. And they're the
Mm.
people that are still vital right at the end of pregnancy. And they're the people that go into birth really, really well and have an incredible birth no matter what happens within their birth. They're able to handle it all.
The only comment I'd probably make, probably not so much with the diet, but the exercise, moderation, because I'm thinking of a couple of situations where there's been extremes both way, both diet and exercise, and that also affects your pregnancy and your birth.
That's
So
actually a really good point. Yeah.
yeah, it is the moderation
Yeah.
of um of both.
Yeah. Because what does excess exercise do? It's a muscle contractor, isn't it?
And it is sure is, and it's can also lead to complications earlier, like particularly earlier in the third. I've seen it in the third trimester.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, women who've done a lot of exercise when they should have been winding it back a little bit. They felt, oh no, I can still do this, but not realizing that the impact it would be having on them and their baby.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. You can actually take the example of Serena Williams. She's a great example of that, the elite sportsman.
Yeah.
Serena Williams, who is just a magnificent, incredible physical human being. And she had a really, really, really complicated last trimester and a really, really complicated birth.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you did
Mm.
right there. That's really, really true. So it is in that moderation, and also that goes into that real inner awareness that we were talking about earlier, Liz.
Yeah, it is. But I think also women, um, I feel that women are, started, we've started to expect them to be super women. And sorry, there's no awards for being a superwoman.
Hmm.
It again, it's coming back to that moderation, listening to your body, of being aware of what's going on with you and your baby, and not
Absolutely.
and not being influenced again by the perception of expectations from outside.
Yes, absolutely, particularly with social media.
Yes, I was avoiding that terminology very deliberately. That it before
I'll pick it up for you.
but before social media, it was the women's magazines. It's always been there, but social media has put it more into our face than it had, we've had in the past. But we've always had it. It's just changed the way we're now getting that information.
Yeah, because women, do you find that women we compare each other? We're big on comparisons,
Oh, it,
huge on comparisons,
it's across
massively.
society. It's,
Yeah,
it's
it's
right across.
yeah, and we're also wanting to, particularly in this day and age, to do it all and to do everything and be everything in sacrifice to us.
Mm.
And it's one of the big precursors to postnatal depression. It's not just hormonal, it's that whole pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Massive amount of pressure, the pressure to breastfeed when you're so tired and you've got all these complications and everything's so hard. It's like, yes, breast is breast. I'm the first person to advocate for that. But you want to know something? You need a happy mum. You really need a happy mum. And a fed baby is best, let's face it. But
We've also there's a lot of women, I'll reword that, there's a lot of women who have their baby and go home and expect to be able to do everything they were doing pre-baby, and it's expected of them.
yeah.
In so many situations where, and the first time I came across this was actually a Greek lass, where she had 42 days of lying in, which I love the terminology, but it was like that was that precious time for her and her baby, and she was looked after by her mother, her aunt, her grandmother, and that, yeah, I learned that many years ago, and that's something I've always promoted. Accept help. Don't be afraid to say no.
Mm,
If someone offers, if someone asks you what you want, if someone cooks you a meal and leaves it for you, those little things that make such a difference to nurturing your mum and your dad as
absolutely.
well.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so, 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 so true. And that was a big part of so many cultures.
Mm,
That whole village that came in to help a mum. And so she could rest and actually sleep because it's sleeping and breastfeeding and being with a baby and just recovering.
yeah,
Because when you give birth, Liz, and you know this, your energy is just shattered. It goes out here. You need to bring it all back.
yeah.
And there's this beautiful, beautiful term called matrescence that I love this term. It's an incredible term, and it actually describes, for those people that don't know it, it actually describes the identity shift from pre-baby to motherhood. And it sounds a lot like adolescence. And that's the other change of identity that is based on a massive hormonal shift. When you're going from a child, we're going into an adult. And what predisposes that is a massive hormonal shift. And matrescence is exactly the same. It's moving from being pregnant before you have a baby to actually changing your identity into a mother. And what is a precursor to that is that massive hormonal shift after you've had a baby. And that's where those 42 days after a baby's born is so precious to gather all that energy in. And so you can actually consolidate yourself and love yourself to identify your new
Mm,
identity as a mother. It really is. I love it. And one of the most beautiful services that we have is a postnatal doula because they are
yeah.
incredible. They will come and they will really support you in the absence of having that sisterhood around you, that family around you, like you were saying in the Greek families, the Italian families, even in Dutch families. I don't know what Holland is like now, but 20 years ago, the Dutch families were like that as well. We just didn't have to do everything anymore. No, no, no. We actually rested and actually, reclaimed ourselves as a new mum. It was kind of really cool. Really, really cool. So as you said, what can you do with exercise? Exactly what you're saying, Taylor. You exercise to suit you. And like you said, in moderation, listen to yourself, be sustainable. So there's a lot of women out there that actually force themselves to do something, and that's not sustainable. You're going to hate it. You need to find something that really suits you and make it a habit and make it a really nice habit. And so I think we're approaching the end of it. So as we've actually discussed here, Liz, is that we've actually seen a lot of ways why modern day life actually affects childbirth.
We have covered it
A lot,
a lot,
a
yeah.
lot. Yeah, and I really appreciate your input. It's been a lovely discussion actually, because you can be in peak condition if you choose, but it actually requires, commitment and discipline and passion that you want to actually be in the peak condition for you and your baby, because it's not just affecting you and your childbirth, it's actually affecting your baby in utero as well. And there's actually research out there, genetic research of generational trauma.
Oh, it's becoming out a lot more. We've known about it for a long time. It's certainly becoming a lot more. It's being spoken about a lot more. There's a lot
Massively.
more awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. It can go generations, generations. And
Mm,
so it can stop with us. All this can stop with us with our pregnancy. We have the power if we choose to accept it. How empowering is that?
very empowering.
Yeah, we have the power. We should start a movement. It's awesome. And so what this does, it decreases anxiety and depression. It decreases the likelihood of having an obstructed labor, which is the main reason why you would go for a cesarean section when you're in labor, because that baby isn't coming to come out, because guess what? It's in an OP position and it can't turn because everything is tense. Interesting, isn't it? And those
Mm.
long labors, like we discussed, those long labors where you're just back on back and it takes forever. And then you've got breastfeeding difficulties after that, and difficulty in adjusting to motherhood. That's massive if you've had a long, hard labor, if you've got birth trauma, you're exhausted, you're isolated. All of this we've discussed. And this has ripple effects not only into family, not only into your society, not only to your baby, not even to you as a mother, but it has ripple effects into your baby and it can actually affect generations. So it's pretty huge what we have in modern society. And when you're looking at the fear base in modern society, why are we fearful when we have modern obstetrics available like this that you don't have in hospitals that I worked at in the developing countries? And they, strangely enough, didn't have fear because
Mm.
they weren't exposed to the fear mongering that we are exposed to. So on that note, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. It was an awesome discussion, Liz. I really, really, really loved our discussion. It's awesome. When midwives get together, we talk like this, don't we?
We do.
So I really appreciated you coming along, Liz. I really do. My heart to yours.
Mine to you.
Thank you. I hope you found it exhilarating. And thank you. That's our little thank you. Look at her. She's a happy mummy
That's gorgeous.
with a happy little baby.